Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, dynasty leagues, PPR leagues, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is up? Welcome into the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Tom Dougherty. Of course, this podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Is the final day of our overview as we've gone division by division through the NFL, talking about each team's depth charts and which fantasy players we could pick and pull out of each of these rosters to make up our own rosters, which guys I think are going to be deemed for a good season. Some guys I don't think are going to be deemed for a good season to stay away from in your draft. Some guys that might be a little sleepers in your draft. Which rounds maybe to snag these guys, as we are now going to be doing the NFC or AFC. We did the NFC. NFC's done. AFC North and the AFC South. So that's the Ravens. That's the Steelers, Browns, Bengals, Colts, Texans, Jaguars. And as always, I always forget the last ones. Titans. The Tennessee Titans. All right, so we're going to start in the North with the Baltimore Ravens, the only team named after a poem. Did you know that? Baltimore was the home of Edgar Allan Poe, and they named the Ravens after his poem, The Raven. Kind of interesting. Maybe they just wanted to stick with the bird theme because of the Baltimore Orioles. But I remember the Baltimore Ravens. That was the. I mean, they came over in 2000, and they already got a Super Bowl. Bang bang, 2 Super Bowls for the Ravens. When we have teams that have been around for decades and haven't gotten a sniff at one. Sorry. But the Ravens have been known for having good little rosters. As of right now, kind of looking at the roster, like, where is everybody? Obviously, you got Joe Flacco, but Joe Flacco's not very hot on people's radar right now. Definitely not a fantasy quarterback. Hasn't really been a fantasy quarterback since probably 2013 when he got the Super Bowl. But, yeah, just it's tough. Obviously, there is a couple guys though on this roster that are fantasy viable. One of them is Alex Collins. I really like him. He's a good running back. Gets the ball. I mean, obviously gets his touches. That's the thing. When it comes to fantasy, volume is a big deal when it comes to getting points and how viable somebody is fantasy wise. So just touches in general are a big deal, and Alex Collins gets touches, and he makes good of the touches. I mean, he's a guy who you might want to just, if you're looking for a running back late in the draft, or if you have all your other positions and you need one more guy, he's a guy you could put in that flex position, and it can actually get you some points because he catches the ball to the backfield well, and he gets his yards when he gets his max touches during the game. So I like Alex Collins. A couple of guys they added in the offseason. John Brown comes over from the Arizona Cardinals. Willie Snead comes over from the New Orleans Saints. They grabbed Snead as it was an offer sheet, and he came over from the Saints. They also grabbed Michael Crabtree, a complete revamp of their wide receiving core. I don't know how viable Crabtree is. We'll see how he does with Joe Flacco. Flacco's always been known, going through the deep ball. If there was any running back, if there's any receiver, that would be probably best suited for Joe Flacco, it's probably John Brown because he's got great speed and can take the top off the defense very well. So if you're looking for maybe a receiver to hold in your bench, maybe throw him against a weak secondary, do you think Joe Flacco can torch? And you're going to get some bonus plays because of the 40-yard plays or whatever you may have for your league for those bonus yards. But John Brown could be a guy that you could use that for because he's going to be going deep a lot and probably get hit on. So they're going to hit on something eventually. They're going to connect on something deep throughout the season. So I don't know about any of those really. I mean, reaching, Willie Snead's a good draftable receiver, probably late in rounds after the 10th round, probably between 10 and 6 or 15 right down there at the end. Unless you're absolutely reaching, maybe you get a bump in like the 7th or 8th round. I don't know. I mean, absolutely reaching for a receiver, but there's just so many receivers out there, so much talent. Michael Crabtree, he's kind of fallen out of the good graces. Had his time in Oakland after leaving the 49ers. He's always had okay, good hands, good on the sideline. Been a strong receiver. Let's see how he does with Joe Flacco in his first year. I don't know. I would kind of stay away with him. Tend to stay with. It takes him about a season and a half to get on the same page as a receiver, as a quarterback. It took him that long with even Derek Carr, who's a very accurate quarterback, versus Flacco, who's kind of lost his touch a little bit. Still good with the deep ball, of course, can just really heave it down the field, but kind of lost his touch when it comes to finding those guys on those leveled passes, and also Crabtree, which he does very well, which is those comeback routes on the sidelines. So we'll see how that works this season. I wouldn't really reach or waste a draft pick on Michael Crabtree, but I mean, people think that he's still a top flight receiver. He could be. I just don't think he's going to be able to get into pay dirt that often this season. The Ravens, their offense, we'll have to, I mean, maybe a guy that if you want to just grab him, sit him on your bench, if he gets hot, he gets hot. Or if he doesn't get picked, just snag him off waivers when he gets there, because, I mean, he has a chance to do it. He has the potential. That's the thing. It's all about potential, and you got to match that with your expected. Quickly, before I want to switch over to the next team in the division, looking at their defense, you still got C.J. Mosley, tackle machine. Terrell Suggs is still in there on the defense. You can't turn away with that. Brandon Card's a very good outside linebacker. So if you're looking for individual defensive players, Eric Weddle's on that safety for that defense, very veteran talent there. If you're looking for a individual defensive player, or maybe even a mix and match team defense that you can use, not on a week-to-week basis, but definitely against the Browns when they play them twice a year. So not a bad idea there. As far as, this is one of the rare teams I'll talk about kickers, because Justin Tucker is one of the best kickers in the league, and definitely a guy that you can think about using throughout the whole season, because he's a very accurate and clutch kicker and will get you some serious points. I mean, don't sleep on the kickers. You might sleep on them during the draft, but they can make them break your season, or make them break a week for you very easily. Those kickers, don't sleep on those kickers. All right, let's switch over to the next team on this division. Let's do the Bengals quickly before we go. Next segment, we'll do the Browns and the Steelers. Bengals still kind of reloading. They got Brandon LaFell over from New England. Obviously, AJ Green, top tier receiver. Only decision is where to draft him. Green. The only problem is he's got Andy Dalton thrown to him. That's the only problem. Fortunately, they have a pretty good chemistry. So, I mean, I wouldn't be too scared of him. I would still want to draft him within the first 3 or 4 rounds at least. Definitely the 3rd round. 4th round would be a steal for AJ Green. He might even be like a 2nd round pick if you grab a running back first. Definitely a guy who can be a number one receiver for us for a lot of teams out there, and make some differences. So definitely a guy you can use and get some points out of, because he's just so great, and he's got to be able to keep his temper under control. As you remember, he had a couple issues last season with that, as we've seen. As far as quarterback, I mean, Andy Dalton, stay away. Not a fantasy quarterback. Too many interceptions. Tight end, they got Tyler Eifert. If he could stay healthy, honestly, Tyler Kroft is a pretty good backup as well. If Tyler Eifert does get hurt, Kroft is right there as well as a good tight end. That's the thing. They've had good tight ends on this team. I've always been a fan of the Bengals tight end, so definitely take a flyer on those guys. Just got to make sure, obviously, Tyler Eifert stays healthy, but he can be a weapon if he is. All right, obviously, they still have Brandon LaFell. I wouldn't actually mind having him on my team either, because he gets touches, a good possession receiver, has really good hands for PPR, can be a nightmare. Gets open a lot, works really well in the zone. It just matters. The thing is, you still got Andy Dalton. This thing about receivers, you got to be careful because they got Andy Dalton. This team, though, does have some good fantasy running backs. The thing is, they do mix and match the running backs. You got to give credit. I mean, Marvin Lewis is still there, that head coach in Cincinnati. He's just the unfireable one, apparently. Stuck around, but he does a really good job mixing and matching his offense in their packages. So Giovanni Bernard, very good fantasy running back. Joe Mixon, I had him last year, very good fantasy running back. Obviously, they get Jeremy Hill no longer on the team, so it looks like Mixon will be that guy in short yardage situations, especially around the goal line, going to get a lot of touches and likely get in the end zone a lot. Bernard more out of the passing game, going to be great PPR back, gets lots of catches, out of the screen game and everything. So, gotta like Giovanni Bernard. I really like Giovanni Bernard. He's a great player, and I mean, a little undersized. The one thing he's kind of always been undersized, but he's been able to make a name for himself in the NFL quite well, even with these size restrictions on him. But no, you gotta like Giovanni Bernard because he gets points. Honestly, he's just a point machine. Honestly, he'll have obviously just like every fantasy player, ups and downs here and there, but great out of the backfield when it comes to pass catching. Joe Mixon, if you're this is the thing, if you're a Bengals fan or you really want to pick a Bengals running back, you have two running backs here that fit two different molds. I mean, honestly, you could pick Joe Mixon even if you're in a PPR. If Bernard's not there, both these guys are probably early to mid round picks, anyways. I wouldn't stretch and grab these guys in like the third or maybe the fourth round. Probably be about right. Fourth, fifth, sixth round for these guys would be about right. Obviously, people tried to get all wrapped up in the pre-draft rankings and everything. So like, oh, I got to get him early. Okay. Or I'll try to wait and I'll get him on a value pick. No, Bernard goes quickly, especially after all those top tier guys are gone. They're like, oh, maybe I need a flex running back. I'm going to grab him and just sit him on my bench and then play him when they play a crappy defense or something like that. So people like to grab him because he's kind of a commodity in this league. Very good pass catcher, especially for PPR. Joe Mixon, not as much for PPR because they're going to put Bernard in most of those pass catching scenarios for running back, especially with screens and everything. But Mixon will definitely get his touches out of the backfield with those just carries on carries. And you got to like that if you are a fantasy owner because he's going to get the more touches, the more opportunities. The more opportunities for points, the more chances he can either get in the end zone or just get those chunk plays. All right, on defense, do you have honestly, their defense has never really been it's got names on it. That's the thing. It's got some good names on it. You got Geno Atkins, you got Carlos Dunlap, you got Vontaze Burfict. I want to say Vontaze Burfict. I'm probably saying that wrong. Vontaze Burfict. Vontaze. It's actually Vontaze Burfict. Dre Kirkpatrick is their left outside linebacker. So I mean, you got a bunch of good tackling linebackers in there. If you're looking for just people who are going to get you points through the individual defensive player, if you're IDP leagues out there, so definitely lots of options from there when it comes to just getting tackles. You got obviously Geno Atkins is a machine, but honestly, not a bad team to pick if you're looking for just team defense when they play again. This is the NFC North. All these NFC North teams play the Browns twice, mind you, and unless they start. Even with Baker Mayfield, really, Baker Mayfield's going to start for the Browns. So you're going to be like, oh, I don't want to start this defense because the Browns. So yeah, Baker Mayfield. What's going to happen? Oh, he might throw 2 picks or 3 picks or 4 picks. They're deep. They got George Iloka back there. He's a very good safety. Their corners right now, yeah, Kirkpatrick is at left corner. So ball hawking corner, shutdown corner on that left side. So they got options for that defense position. If you're looking just to pick a defense, I wouldn't draft him, but I would just have him be the first guy to pick him up off waivers when they're going to play the Browns, basically, or maybe even the Ravens. All right, looking at the rest of the roster here, Randy Bullock's a pretty good kicker. Only real kickers I'll talk about is Justin Tucker, pretty much. I guess he's really good. I would want to get him. But just looking at the rest of the roster, they got Ryan Hewitt from Stanford's not a bad player, actually. He's kind of their tight end, halfback, fullback kind of thing, H-back. If you want to grab him, he might get touches. You never know how they're going to run their offense this season. He's not draftable, but definitely a guy to watch out for. on the waiver wire. That's Ryan Hewitt, just in case they have some issues at tight end. He can get some serious touches this season, and it could be an outlet for Andy Dalton. Because the thing with Dalton is he's always the guy who's going to look, okay, he's a first read kind of guy. He wants to get the ball out of his hand. All right, we'll be right back with the Steelers and the Browns on the other side. I'll probably be using a little more time for the Steelers, but the Browns have some interesting pieces too. Their receiving core has definitely gotten a little more interesting over the offseason, so we'll be right back with all of that. Hold on.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. As we get to the second segment of the days here, we're going to finish off the last two teams in the NFC, or AFC, I keep saying NFC, AFC North. The Steelers will lead off this segment, as we'll see how much of this we can get, this segment we can eat up with the Steelers. I don't know how much I'm going to say about the Browns, but like I said before in the previous segment, the Browns have some interesting receivers to talk about. Obviously, there's Baker Mayfield. If he's going to get a start over Tyrod Taylor week 1 or week 2 or week 3, we don't know. Week 7, you never know. I mean, you never know what Hugh Jackson wants to do. You never know. John Dorsey apparently knew he was going to draft Baker Mayfield number 1 like 5 months ago or something, and kept it a secret or something. Told Hugh Jackson like the 2 days before the draft. All right. Steelers time. Mike Tomlin's head coach. They have to change up. They changed up their offensive coordinator. I think he's actually on the Brown. He becomes the Browns offensive coordinator. Todd Haley goes over to Cleveland. I think. I can always check with the 2 clicks of my button here. But Todd Haley goes over to Cleveland. Why do I doubt myself? The Steelers with new offensive coordinator obviously still got Big Ben. Big Ben's a guy that I drafted with the last pick of the draft last year, or the last round. It wasn't the very last pick, but it was the final round of the draft last year. Quarterbacks are interesting because Big Ben's a Hall of Fame quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback, gets points, racks him up. He was my backup, and that's a 10-team league, so there's definitely a little more options out there when you got 2 less teams, obviously. But he's a guy who you could probably just sit in your bench, and if your starting quarterback gets hurt or you need a guy that mix and match, he's gonna put up points because he's got the weapons. He's got AB, he's got Bell, he's got Juju, he's got Jesse James, honestly, who's a very nice tight end now. So, I wouldn't draft Jesse James necessarily early. There's other tight ends out there. He's not really a top 10 tight end right now, but could be, and it could be this year where he breaks out. So you never know. He's got a good quarterback throwing to him. Probably should have had one more touchdown on his record last year. He would now with the rule change. But if there's a team that this rule change is going to help, it's going to be this team because they like to throw the ball around, even to their receiver. even to their pass catching running back. That's Le'Veon Bell, who will likely be either the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick on a lot of drafts this year. No really question about it, unless you got a huge Rams fan that likes Todd Gurley and Zeke goes first and Bell drops to the 3rd pick, where that means the third team picking 3rd is like, oh, hallelujah. I get Le'Veon Bell because he's just a fantasy machine. And what did he average last year? 20 points, 21 points or something like that. It's just ridiculous. It's a volume. It's all volume. Not only is the guy really good at football, obviously, he just gets the ball a lot. He gets the ball, 30 plus touches a game, whether it's out of the backfield, catching the ball, or just running plays, and he gets yards. And then every time he gets in touch, so if he gets 20 running rushes a game and he catches 10 balls, that's automatic. And PPR nightmare. He's a PPR nightmare. Absolute nightmare for the opposing team, that is. Great for PPR if you own him, because he's going to have 10 catches a game right there. Even if it doesn't get 10 points, boom, done. Then there's rushing yards. Then the yards after the catch when he catches the ball, because usually it's pretty close close to the line of scrimmage where he catches the ball, and then he has the elusiveness to make plays. But the guy is a machine, just absolute fantasy machine. And then you also have Antonio Brown. These Steelers, they're gonna have a team where it's actually been like this for the last few years, it's seeming like, in fantasy football, where the Steelers have had both their guys go in the first round, usually within the first 5 picks as well. So, AB is one of those guys where if you miss out on the Gurley, the Zeke, the Le'Veon Bell, unless you really, really like Alvin Kamara and you really, really think that he's going to bounce back again with another crazy season like he did last year, then pick Alvin Kamara fourth. But if you're in a PPR, I would take Antonio Brown in about 2 seconds over Alvin Kamara. So quick. I think that the Saints are going to be fine this year. Their defense is just as fine as it is, but you can adjust. Other defenses are going to make adjustments to that running back and to how he gets covered. So his elusiveness, and it's not like it's basketball where you could just double team him or something, but he's going to be. I wouldn't put it past Sean Payton to figure out how to get him involved in a different way in that offense. But the Saints became a running and defensive team last year. He obviously caught the ball out of the backfield as well, but we'll see how he comes back after a year of tape now on Kamara for defenses to make adjustments for him. He won't go in the tank, that's for sure. Definitely still a first round pick. We've already gone over the Saints, but I would take AB first. I would take AB fourth overall. If I was the fourth pick and I missed out on Bell and Zeke and Gurley, I'd pick AB. I don't have to worry about that this year for me personally, because I have Todd Gurley in the bag already with my keeper league pick, so I can take AB if I have that fourth pick overall. I'll probably take AB. Well, that's not true. I would take probably Zeke or Le'Veon, but if I had the third pick overall, I'd probably take AB. I'd still take AB because I still have Gurley in my back pocket if both those other two guys were gone, and then you can go as far as you want with Kamara going fifth or whatever. You still got obviously David Johnson coming back from injury. Fortunately for him and for fantasy owners out there that might be a little skeptical, it's not a leg injury. It's a wrist injury. So maybe ball security is the one red flag, but he's not rehabbing a knee or an ankle or a foot or a quad or anything like that. It's or hamstring. It's his arm. So his legs will be just fine. He could be right back to where he was a couple years ago. So where he was the first pick of a lot of different players. So you gotta like this you gotta like this team. Juju though, that's a whole other conversation. Juju Smith-Schuster kind of forgot, he got lost in that little rant right there, but he's a guy where I don't know, where do you pick Juju? Where do you pick? Amongst Fortnite players, I'd pick him in the first round, but Juju probably will go in the third or fourth rounds. Maybe a little higher because of the name recognition with fantasy. It's not, we're going to be nerds about this and we're going to get into it. We're going to crack the books open and make sure that everybody's viable with their stats and everything. Make sure it's all, we're back checking and everything. No, it's going to be more people just kind of, it's Juju. I want Juju on my team. He's cool. And obviously he's a great football player, and he had a great rookie season last year. But another guy where our defense is going to make adjustments. Obviously, I think the reason why he had such a good season last year is because he was the guy who was open a lot, and Antonio Brown was covered by 2 guys or 3 guys or bracketed or double zoned or whatever. Juju was able to roam free, and it'll probably happen again this year because when you got weapons like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell on your team, you could be, and you're that third guy who also just happens to be talented as well, but you're not the name like those two guys are. The two guys that coaches before this in the week of preparation go circle on the board. We got to shut down this guy, and we got to shut down this guy, and we got to limit this guy. The limited guy is Juju, where you can't limit him because you're too worried about the other two guys. So Juju's draft stock could go up a little bit, and the fact that he will be the guy open a lot, just like he was last year. But you never know. Year to year, these defenses are so sophisticated in the NFL. They can change a little bit. As far as the defense on the Steelers side of it, as we get to I am taking as much time as I can here because we'll talk about the Browns for a little bit, but the defense for the Steelers had a little bit of issues. Obviously, they lose the heart and soul of the defense to get kind of a punch in the mouth last year when they lose Ryan Shazier. It was awesome seeing him walking out with his fiance at the draft, coming out to announce the Steelers pick this year. That was really, really cool to see that. And you gotta wish him the best when it comes to coming back from that injury. It was horrendous seeing that, but this defense still has a lot of good talented people on it. Obviously got TJ Watt, JJ's brother, now in that linebacker position. They get Joe Hayden over from Cleveland before last season, so he's had now a whole year under in that defense. So Morgan Burnett comes over from the Green Bay Packers to play safety. So I mean that defense is still there. But we'll see how it clicks and comes together this year. It's always a question mark for the Steelers coming into a season. But usually their defenses are pretty darn good. All right, quickly, I saved just enough time for the Cleveland Browns at the end of this segment here. Quickly to go over the Browns. I did give my little rant on. We'll see if Tyrod and Drew Stanton are still ahead of Baker Mayfield on the depth chart right now. They do have some interesting talent when it comes to the old receiving core. You got Jarvis Landry in that slot, Corey Coleman in the outside with Josh Gordon now back in the NFL. He played a little bit last year, actually played pretty well last year too at the end of the season when he came back. And now he's just found his way in there because, I mean, why not? Why not? Get Josh Gordon. I mean, I don't know where are you going to pick him? 4th round? 5th round, 6th round, 7th round. I mean, the guy is a mystery, honestly. Obviously, not been in the league for as long as he has been. Has had issues, pretty volatile, tough guy. If you're making a commitment when it comes to fantasy, it's not that much of a commitment because you just drop him and pick up another guy, obviously. Receivers are kind of a dime a dozen in fantasy football because it's just like, oh, whoever's the hot guy, I'm going to go pick up Emmanuel Sanders because he's going to get a bunch of touches today. So it's tough to tell, I mean, especially when you got either Tyrod or Baker Mayfield. But the thing is, if Baker does start and you are worried about your receivers, I wouldn't worry that much. He's a very accurate quarterback. We'll see how it translates into the NFL, obviously, so there are question marks, but I wouldn't worry that much. Not much at all. But as it comes to their running backs, they get Nick Chubb with that second round pick. They have Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde. Now, Carlos Hyde listed at number 1. They get Carlos Hyde in free agency. And he's now their number 1 running back. So, I mean, Carlos Hyde's actually been a very nice fantasy running back in his career. So, I mean, if you're looking for a second running back, or if you, again, like miss out on those first top tier guys and you get a receiver in the first 2 rounds, or you don't get a running back you want, or you're still looking for just looking for a second running back, he could be a guy you can snag in that 4th to 5th round because he won't last past that. Running backs are just too much of a commodity in fantasy football. He won't last past the 4th or 5th round. He's that good. He's not amazing. He's not show stopping, but 3rd round, even 3rd, 4th, 5th round is where Carlos will be gone by at least. On the defensive side, I mean, honestly, this defense kind of figured itself out. It's actually interesting. It might be a little bit of a tough defense this year. You never know. There's some individual players in there where you can grab if you're looking for tackles or however they score your individual defensive players in your league, whether it's just based off tackles or has to be sacks or turnovers, something like that. Jamie Collins is a name, obviously. You get him. Emmanuel Ogbah is a great defensive end, gets after the quarterback very well. They pick up Denzel Ward in the draft, first pick Obviously the second pick in their second first round pick, they obviously grabbed Baker Mayfield with the first overall pick. Then shocked the world again by getting Denzel Ward instead of Bradley Chubb with that fourth pick. But I actually like the pick. Denzel Ward's going to be a big shutdown corner for a long time for the Browns, and at least in the NFL. We'll see if he stays on the Browns for as long as he wants. But they obviously also have Jabril Peppers, the safety from he's been in the league. His rookie season was last year, but he went to Michigan, so a good defensive player there. So you could just always think about that as a option as well for an individual defensive player. Wouldn't necessarily go for them for a team defense situation, just because it's the Browns, honestly. But it's the way it is. I'm sorry, no offense, it's the Browns. But they have some good little players on that defense. Obviously, Myles Garrett too. Can't forget him for number 1 pick last year. And definitely a guy who can get after the quarterback as well. So you're going to have Ogba. I think that's why they didn't pick Bradley Chubb, honestly, because they needed more help on the secondary. They don't really have. Who's their other corner? Jamar Taylor is their other corner. I don't know who their other corner was before Denzel Ward, who slid right into that number 1 corner position already. And they have Myles Garrett already, and they have Emmanuel Ogba, who's a very good defensive end. So they already have 2 guys on there. You want to try and you're going to stick Bradley Chubb in there when you need help in the secondary, go get Denzel Ward. He's a great corner. So I think actually I like that pick. People are crazy. Oh my God, you missed Bradley Chubb, but they don't really need. You could use Bradley Chubb, but you didn't really need Bradley Chubb. All right, I talked draft on the fantasy show, but it's okay. We'll come back with the AFC South division as we finish up this run through of all the different divisions and going through the rosters. We can find talent and which rounds to draft these guys in. So we'll be back with the AFC South: Colts, Titans, Jags, Texans. On the other side, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back. GSMC Fantasy Football Show today, podcast today on a Tuesday as we finish off our overview of the NFL rosters, going through and checking out the fantasy implications of each roster. We have now reached the final division. You have waited, all you Titans, Colts, Jags, Texans fans. We have reached your division, the AFC South, the final division, as we're going to start with the Houston Texans. And well, the speculation is, it's the second ACL that Sean Watson has undergone injury. He's had to deal with. We'll see how he comes back. Obviously, number 1 quarterback right now. Set the world on fire last year before he got hurt. But the big thing is, who else is going to be a fantasy star on this team? Obviously, there's still DeAndre Hopkins, great fantasy player. Honestly, is a late first round pick for me. If you're not going to go running back, if you kind of want to wait and see, he's kind of the in between, kind of a tweener, right at the end of that first round, beginning of that second round. But then again, the snake drafts are weird because snake draft means it depends if you're drafting for need or for just best player available, obviously. But the snake draft means that if you're going to be picking late in that first round, you're picking early in that second round, then maybe you grab a DeAndre Hopkins with that 8th or 9th or 10th pick, and then go and grab a running back early in that second round, or vice versa. So you know it's going to be available. You just got to watch and see, okay, who are these other teams that are right around me? I mean, the best case scenario is you have the last pick of that first round, and he's still on the board, and you're like, okay, I get back-to-back picks, so I can do whatever I want. That's obviously I don't know. Some people like that, some people don't. I tend to like it, actually, because you get back-to-back picks pretty much every time. And then you obviously have to wait a while before your next pick, so you got to make sure they're good. You got to spread the wealth there. Don't just. That's when you really are kind of forced into drafting for need versus want, or best player available kind of thing. But they also have Will Fuller, who's a pretty good receiver in himself. Still kind of obviously young receiver. He's coming into his third year in the league, so definitely a guy who can make a difference at that receiver position, because I mean he can be a guy who's going to be open a lot too, because DeAndre Hopkins gets covered. I mean, he's a Notre Dame guy, knows how to play receiver, has had a lot of experience at pro style offense, can be a guy who can be maybe your sleeper this year with a 4th, 5th round pick, or even a 7th or a 6th or 7th round pick, because he's going to fly under the radar. That's the thing. Unless the only thing that will keep him from flying under the radar is if he gets a high draft order, like a high draft rating, basically, like pre-draft rating, and those rankings come out and he's up there. That's probably what we're going to end up doing after this show for probably the next week. I mean, the end of this week on Thursday show, we're going to go look at some way too early draft rankings and kind of compare and contrast my draft rankings. I'll only come up with my own draft rankings, honestly. I'll do like a top 50 or something like that, because I mean, it's a little early, but we're still. I mean, it's never truly. You got to prepare. If you want to win your fantasy league, you can't just go into your draft cold. You got to know. You got to know who Will Fuller is and which round to pick him in, because he's the other receiver when DeAndre Hopkins gets doubled all the time. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins will still get his, but Will Fuller is going to be a guy who's going to be open a lot. As far as tight ends, right now it's Ryan Griffin and Steven Anderson, kind of two no-name tight ends that maybe we'll find out who their name, what they can do throughout the season. Not really draftable, because I mean, tight ends really, you only need one. You don't really need two. You can pick up one while the other guy's on a bye. So you don't really need two. So it means max top 12 tight ends in the league will go in this draft. I mean, Jesse James probably sitting right on the edge right there. These guys aren't really there. As far as running backs, they get Donta Foreman as their second guy. Lamar Miller is number one. They get him from Miami. I actually like Lamar Miller. He's a good little running back for fantasy. For fantasy. So if you, again, he's not. I wouldn't take him as my number one running back, because there's probably 10 or 12 guys better than him. But if you really lose out on, or maybe he's the 12th guy. I wouldn't say 12 guys better than him, maybe 10. He could be the 11th or 12th guy, where if you are in a 12-man league or even a 10-man league and you get a guy who picks up two top running backs, something like that, or if you're in a keeper league or something like that, and you have to kind of mix and match on your running back scenario, he could be a good guy, because he is able to catch out of the backfield, has good hands, gets a lot of touches, and will be a nice little work-off point. I think him and Deshaun Watson can work well together with the Texans team. He was because he signed with Houston in 2016, so he's had some experience in that Bill O'Brien offense for a couple seasons now as well. So he's definitely well versed in that language and that verbiage as well. So definitely something to take into account there. As far as obviously quarterback Deshaun Watson. I mean, you're going to draft him. I don't know. I know he's hurt. People are still going to draft him. People are probably going to draft him 3rd, 4th, 5th round, maybe even 3rd round, because that's how good he was last year. He's going to be way up there in the draft rankings. I looked at him. I looked at a lot of them already. He's probably I think he's like 4th in a lot of them. The number 4 quarterback in the league, 4th behind like Rodgers, Brady, and I think Wilson was number 3 or something like that. So I mean, I don't know. You got Matt Ryan at like number 9 or something like that. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is higher than him. Drew Brees is right after. I think Drew Brees is 5th. So, I mean, there's a lot, the draft rankings are interesting. It's very much a speculation. So, but he's coming off an injury. We'll see. I think he's going to be just fine. Very athletic guy, probably a very quick healer, still really young. So, the fact that he was going off of what he did last year, you got to love it. You got to like it. Obviously, you got to hope he stays healthy. But, I mean, he's probably going to go 4th, 5th round. If you're in a league where they're going to pick quarterbacks, you might think your friends or your other fellow fantasy players are going to pick quarterbacks early. He can go as early as the 2nd round, probably. But I'm thinking that 3rd round would be a round, unless you're with some smart owners who don't really think quarterbacks are premium, and you can get a quarterback pretty much whenever you want in the draft. They're going to grab him in that early round. So, just saying. As far as their defense, obviously you got J.J. Watt, Whitley Merciless, Jadeveon Clowney. So, I mean, there's tackles all over the place. Sacks, strip sacks, fumbles. This is a great defense. If they can stay healthy, Jonathan Joseph as that left cornerback. They got Kareem Jackson, their quarterback. So they pick up Tyrann Mathieu from the Arizona Cardinals to be a safety back there. Help with they had some big secondary issues last year. Pretty much led to that 4-12 season, other than the fact that Sean Watson got hurt. But it's not all on the offense. You got to play some defense too. They draft Justin Reed from Stanford as in the 3rd round. He's a good safety there. He's going to be a young safety. Might take that job quickly at the free safety position. So it's a good team defense if they stay healthy. I mean, definitely a draftable team defense if they stay healthy. Probably, I mean, I don't know, but defenses are going to get picked late in the draft anyways, but definitely a draftable team defense. A lot of individual players in there as well. Merciless is a tackling machine, also pretty good in the passing game as well when it comes to coverage. So definitely an idea there. Quickly, as I'm coming up already we took too much time on the Texans. We're going to go over to the Titans really quick here, as they have a little less to talk about than the other two teams. Actually, let's go to the Colts. Titans have a little more. Let's go to the Colts. You got to hope Andrew Luck's back. I wouldn't even draft him unless I see him playing training camp and play in the preseason. I wouldn't draft him, and I wouldn't draft him anyways because he's just too injury prone. He's got some weapons. T.Y. Hilton and Ryan Grant on the outside. Everybody else is kind of a no-name. They drafted three receivers. We'll see what happens there. But doesn't really have much help. They do get Quentin Nelson. They'll help him on the offensive line when it comes to protection. But T.Y. Hilton's a good receiver. He'll get his touches. He'll get in the end zone. So probably a 4th, 5th, 6th round guy. The thing is, it doesn't matter who's throwing to him. He'll get his points. So, I mean, I'd still pick him, or maybe let him if he slides. If you think he slides, you got to watch those draft rankings, see where you are, especially if you're drafted online. Guys might just pick him because he's there, so you got to be wary of that. So that's why I'm thinking 4th, 5th, 6th round for Ty. Andrew Luck, honestly, I hope he's still on the board when it comes to like the 15th round or 14th round, because I just would snag him right there just in case, and I'd sit him on my bench. I get him as my second quarterback if he's still there, because I think everybody's going to be down on him this year because he's still coming back, but he could obviously be really good if he's healthy and playing like he could play, because he's a very talented player, but just had some serious injury issues. As far as running back, right now the number one running back is Marlon Mack. So we haven't heard of him yet. It was a 4th round pick last year out of South Florida. Obviously, they lose Frank Gore, and they have basically all rookies. They have a second-year player at running back. They have 2 rookies they drafted. They drafted Nyheim Hines in the 4th round this year out of North Carolina State. So I don't know. Chris Ballard's got to figure out helping out Andrew Luck there, using a lot of tight ends. You're not going to see those guys get drafted. As far as the guys that probably will get drafted, Jack Doyle is a top 10 tight end. Gets a lot of touches. Very good in the zones. Fine soft spots in the zone. Very talented guy. So, I mean, he'll get picked in this draft. Eric Ebron, also a good tight end. So Luck does have weapons when it comes to tight ends. Not so much in the receiving core. T.Y. is very good, but he has more weapons, it looks like, on the tight end core with Doyle and Ebron. So maybe they'll dilute down both those points. So maybe they become, because they're sharing and they're not going to get as many touches. I mean, the best thing with Doyle was that he was a number one option a lot of times on these plays for Jacoby Brissett last year. because he was the only guy who was the really stalwart there at tight end. Now they get Eric Ebron from Detroit, and he could be maybe taking some touches away from Doyle. You kind of have to pick and guess who's going to get in the end zone pretty much. Ebron also a very good tight end as well. So maybe one if there's injury issues or something like that, then you could snag one of them off the waiver wire. But now I'm seeing Ebron on that roster. I'm thinking that maybe neither of them become draftable now, or maybe late round picks if you still really are reaching for a tight end, because they're both serviceable, very serviceable tight ends. They get points, but with tight ends you want to definitely have a top 10 guy, because they can definitely they're not going to make. I don't think they're going to make or break your season, but they can make or break a week for you. They can definitely make a week for you, because tight ends are. I always figure tight ends are like almost like bonus points. Unless you're playing against Gronk or something like that, because tight ends are kind of hit or miss, honestly. All right. We're going to come back with the final segment. It'll be the Titans and the Jaguars. I know we're finishing off with two sexy teams. I mean, obviously, they both actually did make the playoffs last year, so two playoff teams out of this division. So we'll come back with that, and so stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, as we are here with the final segment of the day today. On a Tuesday, I've been your host, Tom Dougherty. We're bringing you the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars on this final segment of the day today here. And we'll just go through the Tennessee Titans here for the first half of this segment, talking about their receiving core, obviously Rashad Matthews and Corey Davis. Corey Davis kind of having some issues with the injury bug last year. Came back in that playoff game, had a nice performance against the Chiefs. Also had a nice one against the Patriots as well. So got a good look out there for the rookie last year. Now coming into a second season, going to be probably a highly drafted receiver, honestly, in the NFL. I mean, in fantasy drafts for lots of players, probably going to be a third-round pick right there. Probably about right for him. Maybe you're even late second-round pick if you're looking for him to be your top receiver. But probably around the third-round pick is where you're going to look at him. Hopefully, maybe drop to the fourth round. I mean, I wouldn't want to stretch too far. With Rashad Matthews, going to be a guy probably fifth or sixth or seventh rounds. If you're looking for like a third receiver, second receiver, he's a good pass catching guy. Going to get a lot of touches when it comes to more of your PPR leagues. Probably a little more highly touted. Going to be higher rated when it comes to PPR. Davis probably going to go either way, because the fact that he's a big play guy. Going to have a lot of options when it comes to whether he's going to catch the ball on like a wide receiver screen, or he's going to get lots of yards after the catch as well on deeper balls over the top. So Marcus Mariota can throw the ball around, so you can't say no to him. As far as Mariota himself, that's another conversation. If you want to run with Marcus, run with Marcus. He can go. He's a good quarterback. I've been watching him since college. He's a smart guy. He can make all the plays, can make all the throws, can throw touchdowns to himself. Has a bit of an issue with ball security. Has a bit of an issue with his pocket awareness, taking sacks. Obviously, he's a little more valuable because he runs and can get those rushing yards, which are very valuable in fantasy football. So, as far as quarterbacks, I've always been preaching on the show the fact that quarterbacks probably shouldn't get picked until late in the draft. Marcus is probably one of those guys. If you're going to want him as your number one pick, you don't need to take him until at least the 13th, 14th round, unless you, again, have players that you think are going to, start seeing some movement. You got to read the draft. You got to read the room. You read the whatever, I mean, it's called the virtual room or whatever you are, if you're drafting in the online, whatever it is. And you are trying your chat room, whatever you want to call it, with your friends or whoever you're playing fantasy football with. But you got to read that and see. I mean, if people are kind of trending towards quarterbacks, and if you want Marcus, you got to. That's the thing about with fantasy. You got to plan. And sometimes you got to plan. Sometimes you got to have. Okay, I'm looking for this quarterback. I want this guy. Like last year, I made a plan. I'm like, okay, before I decided, okay, Aaron, we're gonna wait on quarterbacks. I'm taking Aaron Rodgers first overall. Didn't really work very well because not first overall, but my first pick. It was I think I had the eighth. I think I had the eighth pick last year, or the sixth pick last year. So I just took Aaron Rodgers. I'm taking Aaron. I don't care what everybody has to say about him. I'm taking Aaron Rodgers. Probably shouldn't have. It didn't really end up mattering because I had Todd Gurley, got him in the third round. He ended up having a crazy season, but. And I still got Mike Evans and DeAndre Hopkins, so I don't know who I was playing against. People were I got one of them in the third. I think I got DeAndre in the fourth round. People were probably like, "Oh, who's going to throw to him?" I ended up being just fine. But this year, I think that when it comes to quarterbacks, definitely going to wait. Definitely going to see what happens. Marcus Mariota, you got to kind of pick. If you want Marcus to start off the draft, maybe go get him in the 9th round, 8th round. If you see guys starting to pick quarterbacks, you got to feel the room. You got to play the room. This is a perfect example of how you might lose out on somebody that you want going into the draft because you didn't act quickly enough, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be the guy who waits for the quarterback, which I've been preaching. Do that. But not everybody in your draft listens to my show, probably. Hopefully they do, but they might not, and they might not be listening to me and saying, oh yeah, I'll wait on my quarterback. We're all going to pick quarterbacks in the last 4 rounds of this draft. No, some guys jump the gun, definitely, and they want to go get the guy they want. So they use a 4th round pick. They use a 3rd round pick. They use even a 1st or 2nd round pick on a quarterback. So, I mean, you don't really need to do that. I think that, especially for PPR people, get as many pass catching running backs as you can. Get as many possession receivers as you can. For non-PPR people, get as many running backs as you can, just in general. Running backs as you can in general. And mix and match them as best you can. And that's the problem. Once you get to the draft, you got to be able to, okay, who am I going to play this guy off of? Who am I going to mix and match him with? Am I going to have really tough decisions every week when it comes to these guys who are basically the same player? And you got to basically have a crapshoot on who's going to be the guy who pops that week. Because the last thing you want is to have 2 guys like this team right here. Perfect example. Tennessee Titans. Their running backs are Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis. You say you have both of them. Which guy's going off today? I mean, honestly, this is actually for fantasy implications. The fact that Deion Lewis is no longer on the Patriots is probably a good thing because it really is we're going to see what he's really made of, and it'll probably make Derrick Henry be the standout guy on this team because Derrick Henry haven't gotten to him as a receiver. I mean, as a running back. For PPR people, Deion Lewis might be the guy because Derrick Henry's a little less talented. I think a little more the ground and pound, get the ball in the backfield handoffs versus Deion's going to be the guy in the passing game. Going to be a great weapon for Marcus Mariota in the passing game. I think, especially if they use two back sets and stuff like that. So, give me a weapon for Marcus Mariota for sure because of his talents out of the backfield catching the ball. So, I mean, if you're a PPR, maybe go Deion. If you're not, go Derrick Henry because Derrick Henry's going to go and get a lot of touches, especially close to that goal line and get in the end zone a bunch. But definitely interesting now with Deion Lewis on a new team and a new offense with the new head coach also with a new head coach in Tennessee as well. Mike Vrabel, his first year as a head coach in the NFL, and it's going to be with the Tennessee Titans as they even though made the playoffs last year, they lost to the Patriots, so had to say goodbye to their previous coach. Got to go with Mike Vrabel now as the new head coach of the Titans. So, yeah, as far as other guys to look at here on this team, on their tight ends, Delaney Walker, very good tight end, probably a top 10 tight end. Going to be a guy that he gets a lot of touches, very good in the zone, finds a lot of soft spots. PPR probably be a little higher rated because of the pass catching availability and just getting those volume on the catches. So definitely going to be more sought after when it comes to PPR. So definitely be on the look for him. When it comes to tight ends, I think that maybe he's going to be definitely a mid-round pick, unless you're reaching and really want to get him. Again, you got to read the room. And whenever I say all these rounds, that's why I give you a range of rounds, because you never know what your other teammates are going to do. You got to be able to read the room and watch it and be like, okay, I got these guys. We're trending towards this way. These guys are kind of coming up on the old overall ratings when it comes to not position by position, but just overall ratings. We're coming to this guy. Okay, maybe have to get to him sooner than I wanted to. All right. I didn't really go through the Tennessee defense. They have a good defense. They actually do. And their secondary, just pick one of their secondary players, whether it's Byard or they're really talented corners. They got Kevin Byard or Dory Jackson or Malcolm Butler now. They get him from the Patriots. They also got Logan Ryan too, who's from the Patriots as well. So lots of options there with the secondary for the Titans. I would honestly, that's a defense I would draft right there. They have a really good defense. Wesley Woodyard, also a very good a very good linebacker, and they got Brian Arakpo from the Washington Redskins as well. So that's just tackling machines for whether it's ODP or not. All right, Jaguar time, as these are those guys who almost won the AFC Championship game behind Blake Bortles. They got Marquise Lee as the number one receiver, Dante Moncrief as well. They lose both Allen Robertson and Allen Hurns. Hurns goes to the Cowboys. Robinson goes to the Bears. So they have Moncrief and Lee. Lee is a good receiver. He's going to get a lot of touches this year. Obviously, they still have Keelan Cole. D.D. Westbrook's a very good receiver. Both guys probably either you're going to draft him late in rounds, or you're going to wait and just pick him up off of waivers, which you're probably going to do anyways. Leonard Fournette is going to be a first-round running back, no doubt. Probably around that 6th through 8th pick in the first round if you're not going to go with a receiver. At tight end, Austin Seferian-Jenkins is a very nice tight end. Like him a lot. Coming over there from New York, the Jets. Blake Bortles will probably use him, and I think he's going to be a good weapon for Blake Bortles. Probably draftable. If not, maybe pick him up off waivers if you see him popping early in the season. Definitely got to like Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I like him a lot. Always been a fan. As far as quarterback goes, I would probably stay away from Blake Bortles. I know he just got he got another little contract extension from this team, but I would I'd probably stay away from Blake Bortles fantasy wise. He's not a top 12 quarterback. They're not going to be on your fantasy boards at all, or anywhere near the top at least when it comes to picking up fantasy wise. Like I said, Fournette, honestly, him and Yeldon are probably draftable because they're going to get enough touches. This is how they run their offense. Fournette, maybe not through full volume, will get touches, but definitely getting getting pay dirt, getting in the end zone. TJ Yeldon, for you PPR players out there, like I said, if you're PPR, just collect pass catching running backs, and TJ Yeldon is a pass catching running back, and actually had a very nice season last year. Being a nice weapon and an outlet, safety valve for Blake Bortles as well. This team was built off their defense. This is the top tier defense, obviously going to be very highly touted when it comes to the draft. And another thing you got to do, you got to kind of have to see where we're leaning on defense. Obviously, if you're going to get one of these top defenses, whether it's this team, the Vikings, the Saints, even if a healthy Texans team, you might have to reach. You might have to go up in the earlier rounds. You might have to go in the 12th, 13th round to get a defense. Be one of the first guys to grab a defense, or gals, first people to grab a defense, because that's how you're going to get one of these defenses. If these are the first ones that go. That's the thing. You got. This is just a dream for individual defensive players. You can just, if you're in an IDP league. And you had a chance to just draft one team to fill out all those positions, you would draft this team, because you got Calais Campbell, you got Malik Jackson as two options for your defensive line player, Telvin Smith, Miles Jack as two options for your linebacker player, Jalen Ramsey and Tashawn Gibson and AJ Boye as all options. Well, you got a safety and a cornerback, so I would take Tashawn Gibson, and then either Ramsey if he's available, or Boye. Obviously, I think Jalen Ramsey has inserted himself now as one of the, if not the top corner, as one of the top corners in the NFL as a whole. So definitely something to think about there as I've zoomed through this little overthrough of the Jaguars defense depth chart, because the fact that they're pretty light right now, honestly, when it comes to receivers. I mean, Dante Moncrief right now and Lee are the number 2. I think D.D. Westbrook and Keelan Cole will both get their touches, and both are going to be guys that you could use on fantasy, especially for flex. So those are 2 guys I wouldn't draft necessarily unless you just are looking for picks to draft. Look, I mean, you're looking for some just throwaway picks at the end of the draft. Those are definitely guys. I mean, just take if you want them for week 1, basically. But you could also pick them up in waivers too before week 1. So it's really owner's choice when it comes to that one, because they're going to get their points as well. They're good little fantasy commodities. Those possession receivers are going to get lots of touches, as Bortles does like to spread the ball around. Obviously, Fournette as a pretty easy pick, first round. TJ Yeldon probably actually 4th or 5th round, maybe even early for PPR teams, because he's going to get a lot of catches out of the backfield as well. All right, we have reached the end of the road here as we have gone through the AFC North and South divisions, finishing out this run through of the entire NFL and all of the teams' different depth charts. If you missed the first 2 shows, last week we did the AFC East and West and the NFC North and South. Then last Thursday, a week from the Thursday that just passed, before that, I think that was May 2nd or 3rd. I can check on the calendar here 1 second. It was May 3rd. Yes, May 3rd we did the NFC East and West. So just go, if you missed all those ones, go back and look at your GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. It has been the last 4 shows that we've done this. So, and then on Thursday, we're going to go through. I'm going to make my own fantasy rankings, probably do like a top 50 or top 30, and then compare that to the ones that we see all over, like, Fantasy Pros, or I don't know if ESPN has one yet, or Yahoo, but there's definitely some pre-draft rankings already out. We'll compare and contrast what I've come up with. So stay tuned, and don't stay tuned. Come back and see us again on Thursday, but we're done today, and we'll see you again on Thursday. So have a good week. We'll see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.